Funding for Lawmakers comes from
the University of West Georgia in Carrollton, ensuring a better life for Georgians in the 21st century. More than 100 programs of study prepare students for successful careers in the critical professions of education and nursing, as well as business and the liberal arts. The Georgia Chamber of Commerce, the voice of Georgia's business community, over 4,000 members strong, working with lawmakers for over 90 years to make sure that our state remains a place where companies thrive.
and by supporters of Georgia Public Broadcasting. Thank you.
Coming up on Lawmakers, it's crossover day, Legislative Day 30, the last chance for bills to pass out of their originating chambers. Senate debate on embryo legislation focuses on donor compensation. And legislation intended to stimulate Georgia's economy passes the House. Those stories and more are coming up next.
Live from Atlanta, this is Lawmakers. Here are your anchors, Wandy Lawson and David Zelski.
Hello everyone. On this crossover day, the House is scheduled to return from a dinner break momentarily, and the Senate adjourned just minutes ago. Also on tonight's broadcast, two ethics bills supporters hope will bring reform past the Senate. In a surprise move, the Senate takes up the so-called sin tax on adult entertainment establishments.
And the House votes to eliminate the ad valorem tax on automobiles, replacing it with a one-time title fee. But our first story tonight is the legislature reactions to the current economy. Well, attracting new business to Georgia and giving the unemployed some breathing room was the focus of a handful of bills which passed the House earlier today. Lawmakers Valerie Edwards is live with the latest. Valerie.
In Wandy, let's start first with House Bill 482, which passed unanimously. Representative Tom Gray sponsored the measure to exempt business inventory from the ad valorem tax. The estimated cost to the state, more than $2 million. Voters will decide next November whether or not to approve the measure. A second bill sponsored by Graves, House Bill 481, is titled the Jobs, Opportunity and Business Act. Here is Graves to explain the measure.
481 had four components in it that are strictly geared towards job creation. It had two tax incentives towards businesses who hire somebody who's currently unemployed and they commit to keeping them employed for a period of time, as well as the removal of the sales tax deposit, which puts working capital back into businesses, and then a startup your own business holiday, a suspension of fees for 1 year to be creative, chase the American dream, and start your own business.
Opponents of 481, however, say the $500 million price tag is too much to pay. Sarah Beth Gale is with the Georgia Budget and Policy Institute.
And there's an analysis that's attached to the bill that kind of goes through that and sees what will the state get out of it. And actually, we won't get that many jobs. Most of the money, the vast majority of the money, is actually going to go to employers who would have already hired these workers.
Now, from the House Committee on Industrial Relations, House Bill 581 brings $226 million federal stimulus dollars to Georgia to help the unemployed. Representative Mike Cohn explains one part of the bill.
Basically, what I've been told with the Labor Commissioner's office is some of the folks that are currently part-time workers that become unemployed were not able to access the system. They've been basically told they had to lie and say they're looking for full-time employment. And what this bill does is allow them now to go in there and be honest and say, I'm looking for part-time work, but I've lost my part-time job. HB 581 also provides an additional 13 weeks of unemployment insurance and allows unemployment benefits to continue while training for a better job. And a pair of tax breaks, one for those in the market to buy a new home, another for businesses in less developed parts of the state, or those who want to relocate their business to Georgia. Both measures passed overwhelmingly in the House. One bill which has garnered a lot of attention in the hallways of the Capitol this session but didn't make it to the Senate rules calendar was SB 182. Senator Judson Hill explained it to me as federal stimulus money, which would have paid a portion of COBRA benefits for the unemployed. Reporting live, I'm Valerie Edwards for Lawmakers.
Thanks so much, Valerie. Well, the House today voted down the ad valorem tax on cars, replacing it with a one-time title fee up to $2,000, expected to provide up to $150 million for trauma care. House Motor Vehicles Committee Chair Tom Rice says House Bill 480 will increase state revenues by decreasing fraud.
that it's so easy with the current system to take that title, ask the person who sold you the car, whether you're a dealer or not, to sign the back of the title, keep it open, and when you get a buyer, wherever that might be, just ask them to sign the title. There's no sales tax, and they're on their way.
Democratic leaders DeBose Porter and Calvin Smyre rose in opposition, saying the fiscal impact of the bill remains unclear and that the money placed in the general fund may not be used for trauma care.
If we do this, I'm going to commit that I'm going to put it in trauma care, and I'll see if I can get 90 of you to vote with me.
Just say if you purchase a car for $29,000, go down to the bottom on the recap. The city will get $1,111. The school system will get $1,057. The state gets $1,321, a total of $3,489. Look on the House Bill 480. The city will get $813. The school system gets $0.
Smyre's remarks drew this response from House Ways and Means Chair Larry O'Neill.
As a matter of fact, even if there is not an eSPLOST in effect in a particular county, a distribution goes into a reserve in that county in the event they ever adopt it. More toward education than any other measure we've adopted this entire year, or in my lifetime that I know of, is going to go directed in statute to education. No ifs, ands, or buts in the future, directed in the bill. No zero like was represented to you up there.
HB 480 passed 133 to 39, and it now moves to the Senate.
Atlanta voters could have the choice this November to vote on whether or not to create a special district tax to go towards police and firefighters. SB 77 sponsor Senator Kasim Reed answers a question from Senator John Douglas about this bill, which does aim to save many of these service jobs and prevent possible furloughs and layoffs.
What's wrong with the system we have in place now?
What's wrong with the system we have in place now is we don't have, there is an impasse within the city of Atlanta, and there has not been any funding in 24 months. So you're having police officers and firefighters being furloughed. The furloughs are costing the city of Atlanta 168 officers in terms of officers being out of work. And it's really gotten to a point, if you've been following the local media in Atlanta, where it is crippling the public safety component. What people said is they didn't mind supporting police and fire, but they didn't want to contribute to anything else. So that's what this bill does. It basically just sets up a separate fund so that you can monitor those dollars, Senator.
Will you yield for one more question?
Of course I yield.
Is it not true that we already have an 8% sales tax in Atlanta, and they also have some of the highest property taxes in Georgia?
The 8% is true, and we passed the 8% by referendum on a bill exactly like this. And 71% of the residents in the city of Atlanta voted for that 8%.
Now SB 77 passed 30 to 25 and now goes over to the House. Well, shortly before our program started tonight, the Senate passed a bill that would prohibit creating new embryos for stem cell research. Lawmakers Brittany Evans joins us with these late-breaking details. Brittany, what's the latest?
Thanks, David. SB 169 would give embryos the status of personhood rather than property. This bill has seen passionate debate in committee, and that passion was no less prevalent today on the Senate floor. The original language of SB 169 concerning in vitro fertilization limitations was stripped in committee, but today on the floor, disagreements over the language of the bill may have led to its tabling. Senator Dan Weber was concerned about not compensating egg donors.
We're going to take it away from those angels who would like to do it and would ask only some compensation for what they're losing.
The bill's sponsor, Ralph Hudgens, disagreed.
This bill has absolutely nothing, big letters, nothing underlined to do with in vitro fertilization.
Other opponents, including Senator Nan Orrick, believe that the bill will hurt Georgia's status in the science community by limiting research. Senator Hudgens says that's not the case.
This will not prevent Georgia from being on the cutting edge of this research.
After the bill was brought off the table, Senator Preston Smith brought an amendment forward in efforts to clarify the controversial language.
The creation of an in vitro human embryo in Georgia shall be solely for the purpose of initiating a human pregnancy by means of transferring to the uterus of a human female for the treatment of infertility or cryopreservation for such treatment in the future.
Senator David Edelman, the Democratic whip, called the bill anti-science and said that this legislation would criminalize certain kinds of biomedical research in Georgia. He cited Georgia's university system and research institutions as being opposed to the measure. In the end, Senate Bill 169 passed by committee substitute as amended by a vote of 34 to 22. It now heads to the House.
Okay, thanks for that report, Brittany.
Thank you.
Well, the House votes today to allow pre-birth adoption. Opponents of House Bill 388 charge that a means for adopting embryos is not needed in Georgia. But bill sponsor Representative James Mills says the measure has pro-choice and right-to-life support.
David, combined. There's well over 20,000 embryos in the state of Georgia, and there are many cases in the courts throughout this nation dealing with this situation.
Do you further yield?
Yes.
But specifically with regard to my question, are you aware of any of these cases being litigated in Georgia?
I am not personally aware of any in Georgia. However, technology has gone far beyond our current code system, and I along with the Committee on Judiciary, agrees as moving this bill forward and the rules that we don't see any problem with giving parents this option. And if they don't like this option, then they can take the current law that they currently have.
Although Representative Bobby Franklin has in the past joined Mills in efforts to establish rights for embryos and fetuses, he cited a pro-life unity document in opposing this bill.
The money to be made in openly trafficking those humans to the adoption market and increasing inventory supplies through increased embryo production outside the womb would only add to the dehumanization of children in this modern era of bioethics.
Representative Mike Jacobs countered that the measure neither increases nor decreases reproductive rights.
Currently, you can only transfer an embryo by contract. It's something that can only be done by contractual agreement. Well, a contract is subject to interpretation, a contract is subject to dispute, and a contract can be subject to litigation. All this bill does is gives the receiving parent the certainty of a final court order vesting parental rights in the receiving parents.
And the bill passed 96 to 66. A motion to reconsider failed. HB 388 now goes over to the Senate. And the Senate passed 2 ethics reforms bills today. GPB Radio's Rome Bureau Chief John Sepulveda is live at the Capitol with that story. John.
David, combined, Senate Bill 17 and 96 would make 3 main changes to the ethics law, changes that lawmakers say will provide more integrity in the policymaking process. First, a list of state lawmakers who are late paying their state income taxes would be turned over to the House and Senate ethics committees. The ethics committees could then decide whether there are grounds to hold hearings. Senate Democratic leader Robert Brown liked that proposal.
We are willing and gladly able to sign on to this amendment and move this body forward with the decorum and the respect and the dignity that this body deserves. And again, I want to applaud the Lieutenant Governor for his leadership.
And as Republican Senator Don Balfour explains, SB 17 would also require fees for candidates that fail to file campaign contribution disclosure forms on time.
So what we did was we came up with 3 tiers. And let me start with the middle tier, which is where we would be. If your district that you represents more than 40,000, which would be a House member, but less than 500,000, which includes senators, but include big cities and medium-sized cities and medium-sized counties, those folks are paying a lot more in fees. So therefore, yes, their fine should double. If you represent less than 40,000 people, you're in essence running a less sophisticated campaign. You may not always know what you're doing. We're leaving their fines as they are. If you're representing more than 500,000 people, which would be probably the mayor of the city of Atlanta. So that would be a city. Some county commission chairman might have that as well.
SB 17 would also require lobbyists to pay late fees if they fail to file disclosures on time. Lobbyists would also have to make broader disclosures as well as undergo training, says Senate Bill 96 sponsor, Democrat Kasim Reed.
The bill calls for the creation of ethics committees where there are none, if you have none for your local governments. It also calls for the training of lobbyists. The bill that you have in front of you is the exact same bill that passed out of this body during the last legislative session. I commend it for your favorable support.
Now, state senators I spoke with say these changes are meaningful, but some skeptics say similar measures have been proposed in other states without noticeably positive results. Reporting live, I'm John Sepulveda for Lawmakers.
Hey, thanks for that report, John. Well, committee chairmen could soon require legislators and anyone else testifying before their committee swear an oath that they are telling the truth. SB 7 sponsor Senator Ed Tarver explains the bill and is followed by Senator Seth Harp, who says it's a shame this bill is even necessary.
Senate Bill 7 gives the chairman of a legislative committee or subcommittee the discretion to administer an oath or affirmation to a witness who's offering testimony before that committee. It gives the chairman the authority to provide the oath. It authorizes the chairman to record that testimony to provide a record. It only applies to testimony contains knowing and willfully made false statements in response to specific questions directed to the witness by a member of the General Assembly, or a statement upon which a member of the committee or subcommittee might reasonably be expected to rely upon in determining whether to offer, modify, or vote for or against a bill or proposed piece of legislation.
This bill gives the committee, the chairman, essentially when he thinks this is happening, he can call the committee to a halt, get a recording device in there, and put the person under oath. So I strongly urge that we pass this so that we can tell these people that you come before these committees, you're going to tell the truth.
SB 7 passed 50-1, and it now goes to the House.
And now we have the results of our online poll for you. When asked, would you support the recreation of Milton County out of northern Fulton County, 53% of the respondents said yes, while 47% said no. Please be sure to visit gpb.org/lawmakers to vote in the next legislative issue poll.
Legislation that enables property owners to go directly into arbitration over property assessments passed the Senate today. SB 240 aims to shorten this process, which currently requires a person to go through a local board of assessors. Senate Majority Leader Chip Rogers explains how the bill works.
Senate Bill 240 simply establishes an alternative appeals process for a property tax assessment. I want to publicly thank our friends at ACCG, who I work closely with to construct this substitute. This will simply establish another way in which a taxpayer can appeal their assessment, and it effectively, through the arbitration process, puts the taxpayer and the government on a level playing field.
Again, SB 240 passed by a vote of 52-0, and it now goes to the House.
The state's 2,500 National Board Certified teachers will continue to receive a 10% salary bonus when the state can afford it, but the House today narrowly votes to eliminate the incentive for future recipients of the certification. Education Chair Brooks Coleman says House Bill 243 has been the subject of a misinformation campaign by the Professional Association of Georgia Educators.
Page made some really wrong statements to teachers. This bill has zero to do with math and science teachers. The information was sent out to teachers that we were taking this $12 million and going to give it to math and science teachers. That is not true. That bill, as you remember, doesn't even call for funding until after 2011. It has nothing to do with that. This also, ladies and gentlemen, has zero to do with master teachers. That's another piece of wrong information that you received this morning that is not true.
The bill allows currently certified teachers and those who entered certification programs by March 1st to receive the bonus. But Democrats, including Kathy Ashe and DuBose Porter, countered that the bill would kill national board certification in Georgia in favor of new certification programs proposed by Governor Perdue.
What we are really doing is continuing to chip away at the strength of a proven program because the governor and his folks, for some reason, don't like it.
We're going to come up with something here in Georgia that's not recognized nationally. that's not shown to improve student achievement, that's not recognized as doing something better and greater for our students. But this is.
HB 243 passed 92-7. Representative Porter's attempt to have the bill reconsidered failed, so that measure now moves to the Senate. Well, a bill that would prohibit teens from talking on cell phones or texting while driving passed the House late this afternoon. Lawmakers Minu Hosseini was there to speak with the bill's sponsor. Minu.
And Wandi, House Bill 23 would prohibit the use of cell phones while driving for teens under the age of 18. Bill sponsor, Representative Matt Ramsey, explains.
Study after study shows that 16 and 17-year-olds are significantly more impacted by distractions while driving than adults. Every offense will be treated the same, maximum $100 fine and 2 points on their license, which is significant. Class D drivers under the age of 18, if they get 4 points, they lose their license for 6 months or they have to go to driving school.
And although the bill prohibits the use of wireless telecommunication devices while driving, Representative Ramsey says there will be exceptions.
We excluded out navigational devices in the bill. We went through several iterations, but we feel like we've got a really tightly drawn bill now that only applies to person-to-person communication, cell phones, and we've excluded out ham radios and CBs and things of that nature as well. And we do have some emergency exceptions in the bill. We don't want to prohibit a 16-year-old from calling and reporting an accident or calling and telling their parents or a law enforcement officer they're in a dangerous situation. So we've put several emergency exceptions in the bill.
Now, House Bill 23 passed 138-34 and now moves on to the Senate. Reporting live, I'm Minu Hosseini for Lawmakers.
Okay, thank you, Minu. Well, Senate President Pro Tem Tommy Williams ended up tabling a bill today which would have required insurance companies to cover certain treatments for autism disorders. Williams wasn't sure SB 161 had the votes to pass, which may have led to the tabling decision, but still took a few moments to explain why he believes this measure, known as Ava's Law, named after a family member, should be considered in the future.
As a family, we covered the cost of this. The insurance wasn't covered, the state health benefit plan wasn't covered. But I will tell you the savings. If we covered all the people in the state health benefit plan, that's about 600 kids with autism, that if we don't cover it, we're going to be paying $15,000 a year more for that teacher to teach them in a special ed class rather than teaching them in the regular class. I'm asking you to vote to table this bill, as I really don't want to, but I want you to vote to table this bill. But I want your commitment that we study this thing, we get it right, and we come back and pass it out of this chamber next year.
Senator Williams has also asked Lieutenant Governor Cagle to look into a study committee to check out this issue in greater detail.
Well, a little after 6 o'clock this evening, the House passed legislation preventing people from placing tracking devices on other people or on their vehicles. Representative Kevin Levitas presented House Bill 16.
I was surprised to learn that there is no prohibition in the state of Georgia that prevents anybody from placing a tracking device on anybody else's car, or anybody's person for that matter, for any reason. You go to Kroger to get a carton of eggs, somebody can stick a GPS device. That could be a former lover, it could be a newspaper reporter, and there's nothing in Georgia law that prevents that. All this bill does is simply make that conduct unlawful. If you have not consented to it, it's unlawful to place a GPS tracking device.
House Bill 16 passed with 2 amendments, preventing private investigators from using GPS and preventing medical providers from placing the devices on unknowing patients. The final vote on HB 16 was 155-8. It now goes to the Senate.
The Senate today also passed legislation that establishes a Georgia Stop Meth Log. SB 56 would create a system that electronically records the identity of individuals purchasing certain medications used for the production of methamphetamine, primarily the key ingredient, pseudoephedrine.
Georgia needed an electronic log to track folk that buy medicines that create meth labs, and that's all this bill does, is just to create the electronic log. It doesn't cost the state any money. We have a federal grant that will take care of the costs. We will get the software from Tennessee, which has a system such as this, and it will be housed and maintained by HIDA.
Again, Senate Bill 56 passed 49-2, and it now moves to the House. And as we mentioned at the top of our broadcast, it seemed likely that the Senate would consider Senate Bill 91, a measure that would impose a sin tax on patrons of adult entertainment clubs by imposing a $5 fee. An attempt was made to amend that provision to Senate Bill 172, a victims' compensation measure. SB 91 sponsor Jack Murphy later withdrew that amendment request. The Senate adjourned without taking up SB 91 today.
A measure expanding the definition of kidnapping had difficulty passing the House this afternoon. Representative Tom Knox challenged that HB 575 was too broad, but the bill's sponsor, Representative Rich Golick, said it would protect victims.
You get to be able to enhance the sentence of the person by 10 years. Now, if you're somebody that's being accused of kidnapping in Georgia, you're in a world of hurt. You're in a world of hurt. If you get into a little shoving match with your girlfriend over at her mama's house, you could be accused of kidnapping.
Between lines 14 and line 22, make it very clear that incidental movement does not constitute kidnapping, and that language on line 14 through 22 represents agreed upon language between the criminal defense bar and the prosecution community.
HB 575 was initially defeated 86-82, but on reconsideration, that measure passed 99-72. The bill now moves to the Senate.
Senator Jeff Chapman and the rest of the Senate may have become a little more popular with school children today with the passage of legislation which makes Veterans Day, November 11th, a school holiday. Senator Chapman explains SB 160.
Senate Bill 160 changes the language from on Veterans Day from a may to shall recognize Veterans Day and be closed that day to honor veterans. We have about 800,000 veterans in Georgia. You know, the sacrifice, many of you know what that sacrifice is, the separation of families, the low pay, the danger that's involved. But in our country, fortunately, we have a national holiday that recognizes Veterans Day, and there's many activities in communities, there's parades, and there's lots of opportunities for children to be involved in that.
Again, SB 160 passed 51-1, and it also goes over to the House. And just as a reminder, the Georgia General Assembly has adopted a new legislative schedule for the next 3 weeks. For more information on that schedule, we encourage you to visit our website at gpb.org/lawmakers. We will continue to bring you all the latest Capitol news on legislative days because the General Assembly is in recess tomorrow and Monday. Lawmakers returns on Tuesday, March 17th at 7 p.m. And if you have missed any part of this Lawmakers broadcast, tune in tomorrow morning when Lawmakers repeats at 5:30 a.m. here on GPB television. You can also see this episode of Lawmakers at 7 a.m. on GPB Knowledge. GPB Knowledge is available to those with digital television receivers at 0.3 of your local GPB transmitter. For example, 20.3 in Augusta or 8.3 in Atlanta. You can also keep up with all the action under the Gold Dome daily on your local GPB radio station during Morning Edition, All Things Considered, and Georgia Gazette. Well, coming up on GPB television, This Old House. That's next here on GPB.
And that's going to conclude our broadcast of the 30th Legislative Day of the 2009 of the Georgia General Assembly. I'm Wandi Lawson.
And I'm David Zelski. Join us Tuesday at 7 for the next Lawmakers. Have a great weekend.
We leave you now with coverage of the House. They're still considering some of those more than 50 bills on that calendar. Have a good night.
This has been a production of Georgia Public Broadcasting.